extra questions that pop up. Okay, I
Yeah.
got it. So hi everybody. Thanks for including me in this, Christy. I've been very blessed over the last 23 years in practice. That's probably 50% of my patients have been master athletes. So depending on the sport, what that age group of athlete is, obviously it's going to be younger in gymnastics than it is going to be in lawn bowling. But the about half of my practice has been those athletes that are competing in sport at all kinds of nice, incredible levels, both from recreational all the way up to world championships. About 25% of my practice is concussions. That's one of my specialties. And then the other 25% would be youth and sport. So a huge percentage of my practice is going to be those athletes that 35 to 90 and a huge variety of the different types of athletes that I worked with. So what I wanted to kind of do today is take as many questions as possible. So is there maybe questions I can make sure that I cover within my little talk that anybody's like, I'm really here to make sure that I get that? Or does everybody want to just wait until sort of in 10 or 15 minutes when I sort of stop this PowerPoint? Cool.
I'm happy to wait.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
checking. No
Keen.
worries. Perfect. So thanks for having me, and we'll kind of get started. The first sort of thing when we're talking about, let's see if I can advance this here. Oh, it's not letting me advance, Kirsty. Hmm. Oh, yeah, there it goes. So, when we're talking about activity for life, we want to make sure that we're like including all the different stages that we have when we're learning to train, then we're training to train, and we move through the different levels. And this can be from the birth till 100. There's, we see some of the cool things where we see athletes competing at 105. My aunt's dad competed in curling until he was 103, I believe. And he was blind after 90. And he was interviewed up in CTV in Ottawa at one point. And he was like, well, yeah, of course I can still keep playing. I know where everything is. And so I love hearing those stories when athletes can continue to train for many years. When we're dealing with masters, typically we're dealing with non-recreational, non-weekend warrior type of athletes. They're the ones that are utilizing coaches like you guys or working with other professionals to achieve and compete and train as opposed to just recreational. So when we're talking about some of the masters athletes and when we're talking about, let's say, for example, the 2009 World Master Games, lots of different sports that we're seeing at the world level. It's incredible to see the numbers of sports that we have. I had to go and look up futsal, which outdoor futsal down in the European Master Games, which is a five-a-side indoor, normally soccer, but incredible different types of sports that we're seeing at the world level. Um, One of the really interesting things that I wanted to include in this was that there is lots of sort of misconceptions about the master or senior athletes, that there's a huge physical decline, the over the hill over the age of 40. But research really shows that there's not a noticeable decline in that physical ability until over the age of 70, which is fantastic for a lot of the master senior athletes who sort of thought, oh, well, I'm over the age of 40 or I'm over the age of 50 or I'm over a certain age. And therefore, there's going to be a lot of physical barriers that are going to affect on a physiological level my ability to keep playing in my sport. Um, Interesting when we look at this sort of cross section data for the hours that are trained in a year for the different decades of life. This is being used with international track and field athletes. You can see that bar going up and down. And I like to sort of think that some of that is going to be maybe children and work and careers coming through those volumes. So if you see us peaking where we typically think we're going to be in high performance in our sport in our 20s, and then that drop that comes down in that 35 range where I think a lot of people are starting their families. But interestingly enough, as the as the families get a little bit older, and maybe the parents are able to get out and train a little bit harder, we can see the hours start to go up in the mid 40s. And then I like to see that nice spike over in their 60s and on, when we see people are moving into retirement and have more time to probably train and play in sports, or a bit more disposable income in order to utilize more training or coaching. So I think that when we see this sort of graph through the ages, it's pretty typical within a lot of different sports that you'll look at the training volume changing through the decades. I want to include a couple cool photos in this today of some of the athletes that I've worked with that are in that master categories. This is an incredible local athlete, Susan, that competed this year at the World Triathlon Championships. Super neat to see her training for many years at a sport and then getting to go to the World Championships. It was canceled for a couple years, of course, because of COVID. And so she finally got to compete this year. And interesting to see the different types of injuries that'll go through the 60 years of training for different types of sports. When we look at why the athletes are training in master sports, lots of different data comes back of that it's mostly for the enjoyment of the sport, but there's also going to be that challenge and achievement aspect. There's a huge aspect focused on fitness, social engagement, and if you see down at the bottoms, it's not so much about the medals or breaking records, but staying fit, meeting friends, working others, and then also tons of personal achievement and accomplishment and challenging themselves. I thought this was kind of neat how there's almost 10,000 master swimmers in Canada. And I think that I love seeing all kinds of different sports having huge numbers in it. Here's another one of our Cove Sport athletes, another Masters champion, went on to the World Championships in swimming and was able to bring home a bunch of medals, and then was named the Canadian champion. And this athlete is in her 60s and grew up playing and swimming and doing, and is continuing to maintain high performance athletics into a later age. Right now, there's over 50 countries holding master sports events, which is incredible. Another super interesting athlete to work with. This was an athlete that competed at Worlds and Masters for Jiu-Jitsu and came home with a medal. Tremendous number of hours training in the gym, and how do you keep that body healthy and happy to get to Masters is part of the fun that I get to do at work each day. So coaching and leading effectively, lots of different aspects that we're thinking of when we're working with master athletes. One of the neat components with coaching, I think, is working with athletes that are, more mature, older, having more life experience, and having opinions to organizing that practice environment or building up the design of their year schedule. And so it's important that we can take all of the knowledge that they come in from their different careers or life experiences and incorporate that into how I build out their rehab program or how I work with them on a coaching level. And it's interesting to see how you can take someone's background in their education or their career and shape and film their training program going forward. Goal setting, obviously super important when we're coaching with athletes, because we're incorporating all kinds of different things, because the masters athletes may or may not be retired or working very intense hours worth their work, families, other aspects coming into play. So goal setting for their microcycles and macrocycles, super important. And that's also super important if we're doing injury prevention and safety, or dealing with injuries in their body or medical conditions. It's interesting from my point of view of working of helping the athletes manage the life plan and also manage the injuries or staying ahead of the injuries that can come with training. And one of the big tools that we want to use is making sure that we're looking at training volume at the overall year, because that's one of the big reasons that we can get into overtraining or into injuries. Another really neat athlete that I work with, this is Nadine. She competed this year in the Antarctica marathon. She also completed her 7 continents by finishing the Antarctica marathon. So super interesting of how to build out the training schedule for a bit of an unusual environment, let alone having to try to get down to Antarctica during COVID. So super interesting case to work with Nadine. So one of the things that we want to think about is some of the differences between youth athletes or maybe middle-aged athletes in moving into more a senior athlete. There is going to be a difference in cardiovascular function because we know that maximum heart rate starts to come down as we get older. The way that you can calculate your heart rate is that 220 minus the age. So if you're working with that 70-year-old athlete, then their max heart rate is going to be very different by 50 beats than that 20-year-old athlete. So we want to try to work on offsetting that cardiovascular function decrease. And typically what the research is really showing with these athletes is that we want to work on maintaining fitness throughout 12 months of the year so that disruptions in training and sedentariness and unfitness that comes with our athletes that maybe have like a shorter season, like a 3 or 4 month season versus some of the sports that go for many months, is that unfitness is actually the biggest predictor of both performance and health and safety in their joints, in their body, and their hearts and their lungs. So it's important that when you're working with older level athletes to focus on building out that training program for the year so that they're cross training and do it maybe in a different sport in their off seasons to maintain the cardiovascular function. In flexibility, interesting that we see there may be a decrease, but probably not. It's more a matter of loss of flexibility because of sedentariness or not training throughout the years. We do want to respect that typically you're going to need a little bit longer of a warm up for the older athletes. So, each year or each decade that you work with athletes that get a little higher, we typically know data wise that the warm up, the number of minutes for a warm up is going to increase by a couple as we go through each decade. So you might see the younger athletes in their 20 being able to be warmed up in 10, 12 minutes, and the older athletes might be 17, 23, 25 minutes before their body is actually quite warmed. So you might want to keep that in mind, especially when you have sports where the athletes are coming quickly from work or life and then right into an event. And with COVID, it's been a much harder time for us to have warm up time before when the rinks or the timings are very short with trying to keep distancing and stuff. The studies that were actually contradicting that muscle mass and strength decline with aging just alone. More likely it's disuse that's where we're seeing that muscle mass. And so that's really exciting that we can have high performance athletes into later years and it's not just an age thing that's going to be holding them back. This is a fun photo. This is my uncle up on the podium in first place there. My uncle Dennis is now in his 70s, still winning world championships in multiple sports. You can see on the right there where he won world championships this year in dragon boat. He competes in kayaking on the left. He was at Master Worlds there. Super fascinating to see someone in their 70s who's been training like he's 20 his whole life, doing 10 kilometers kayaking every morning and 125 push-ups every second day. But super neat, and love this photo that he took on his 70th birthday to show when he was 20 versus when he was 70. And he's an excellent example of someone who's found a way to exercise pretty much every day of his life and continues to excel. I will acknowledge that this handout that I'm going through is available to everybody. I was just going to see if I can find my notes. I'll send the link or I'll drop it in. That this is part of the fantastic PowerPoint presentation of coaching master athletes with the Canadian coaching program. And then this is part of my inspiration. The athlete on the left is my husband looking pretty fierce. And then the photo on the right is him playing with our son. And so he continued to to try to play rugby until his son could join him on the team. Our son's now in training camp in his third year at Acadia for rugby. This was a couple years ago, but my husband is in his 50s and still playing rugby, although now he's playing mostly just for fun. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening, and now let's do some questions. So I will stop sharing and come back to the game. Hi.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie.
Welcome.
So yeah, we want to make this an open discussion. So if anyone has any questions, either, speak aloud or put them in the chat box and ask away.
Natalie, thanks. That was a lot of really good stuff. And I was so interested to see that muscle strength really doesn't change as the age. It's a sedentary nature. In the equestrian sport, we are by nature more of a seasonal activity in the warmer weather. We do. I do have a group, and some of them during the winter ship their horses into an indoor arena where I do coach them, so they sort of get sessions once a week. And it's interesting with the equestrian, the horses as well. We're dealing with geriatric horses and keeping them fit, so a lot of it parallels. But what I guess the question is most people that have horses are also looking after them, caring for them, feeding, mucking, carrying hay, and all that physical stuff. So there's a certain amount of strength required.
Totally.
But if you were to say to your athletes, like in your off season, what would your focus be? I'm thinking of one lady I coach who is incredibly nimble. She's very flexible. I just attended her 80th birthday, and she still rides as her horse at home, and she's amazing. The picture for her birthday was her doing a cartwheel.
Love it.
But the issue there is strength.
No question.
Really, what sort of things can you suggest other than working one-on-one with a coach, like a strength training coach, to sort of build something there? Anything specific?
And I think that the great point that you had there of people who have physical components to their life, we never want to underestimate that you have to be at the gym lifting weights when you're mucking stalls and moving hay or gardening or cutting wood or maintaining
shoveling
lots
snow.
of other what's that?
Shoveling snow.
Shoveling snow, although that is one of the number one reasons we have patients in the clinic. And one of the reasons that we get so many snow injuries is that people aren't maintaining their fitness in the season, and then all of a sudden they're trying to flex, bend, side bend, lift weights, and they don't have that strength for it. But I think that when we look at trying to balance life and figure out, okay, I only have so many hours a week to train or to exercise. Where am I going to put my value in? And I think that the best suggestion I can give is that you look at what your hours are that you have available in your life, and then you work backwards a little bit, and then you kind of try to divide them up amongst the skills that you're working on. So that very inflexible athletes that keep getting injuries that are based on that lack of mobility, maybe a bit more of their focus is going to be on the yoga, the Pilates, or the stretching at home YouTube videos of yoga or stretching mobility work for some of their component, and then a little bit of strength. Or those athletes that tend to get injured because they're not strong enough, or spinal or core back kind of issues. Maybe their focus is the yoga and Pilates plus the core work strengthening. Some of the gyms in the province have the nice circuit that it's like the baseline type of multi machines. If people aren't regular exercisers or weightlifters and don't have the resources for personal training or coaching, those are always a great starting point, because they're kind of designed of 8 or 10 basic big muscle kind of lifts. Right. And I think that one of the issues that we do see in the masters athletes that have shorter seasons is they're not really planning for what are they going to do those other 6 months. The other thing that we see is that when people have the gaps in vacation time, they come back and they're deconditioned and they get injured in that first month back. I know that I'm nervous my son's gonna tear a muscle this week in rugby camp because he didn't run enough this summer because he was landscaping and too tired to run. So you're like, I hope it's strong enough, but don't tear that on the sprint this week, right?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think with your equestrian athletes or your 80-year-old athlete, depending on what their other sports or fitness are, can they cross train in any other thing that they're good at? Can they be
Right. And
swimming
I'm
in their off
thinking,
season,
yeah, I'm sort
right?
of thinking a lot of them, because of the nature of having horses, it's rural. They don't live with a gym 10 minutes down the road.
Right.
Free
Yeah,
weights, is that a recommendation as long as they get the correct
absolutely.
technique?
Yeah. And I think that like home-based gym has exploded since COVID, where people couldn't get into facilities or the facilities were closed. I know I got an
Hmm.
elliptical during COVID so that I could
Okay.
get that going for me a bit more.
Hmm.
But free weights, absolutely. And if you have
Okay.
the ability in season to do small circuit weights with your athletes 1, 2, or 3 times to give them some of those basics for
Hmm.
in their off season, that they're a bit
Hmm.
more comfortable. Stability
Right.
balls are great to have at home
Right.
because
Yeah.
you can be doing squats or lunges or leg curls that are very easy
Hmm.
without any weight. And I give ball squats and ball lunges and ball hamstring curls to athletes from age 5 to 100 because it's nice on the body to have that support and the advantage of the either relying on the stability ball a little bit as you get
Hmm.
stronger or
Hmm.
making the exercise more unstable and harder. And I
Right.
have equestrians that do some neat work with finding their center balance with sitting on the stability ball with their feet up on the wall,
Hmm.
trying to find that
Okay.
center, which is kind of
Okay.
neat.
With the leg straight?
Yeah, they would probably have a little bit of a bent on the knee on the wall to like really mimic what they're doing.
Yeah.
Although if the horse has a little idiosyncrasy one way or the other, that can sometimes be the issue too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're
And
dealing with two
that's
athletes having to find their
that's
centers
right.
together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that instability in the horse mirrors to the rider and the rider to the horse. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Good.
and I think that
Okay.
we can do more balance work and stability work in all of our athletes because we don't tend to think that way enough.
Hmm.
And a
Hmm.
lot of injuries come from us not being able to stabilize above and below the way we want. So anytime you can use wobble boards or BOSU, those half dome work,
Right. Yeah.
right? Always
Yeah.
great for pretty much every athlete.
Okay. Thanks so
That,
much.
that help?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm
Cool.
sure the others have cool questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, so the lawn bowls population, of course, is relatively aged.
Yeah.
In our province, it's 60 plus for sure, mostly,
Mhm.
and many there's the whole area of recreational. They come to just enjoy the social or whatever, but many come in later years and may or may not have had any kind of athletic experience when they're
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
And so it's, I have questions around how do we start these people
Yeah.
in an encouraging way so that they're safe, so that they develop the kind of, physical well-being that they need to be able to work through just, recreational play, which is mostly walking, a little bending and stretching and
Yeah.
endurance, some
Yeah.
stamina if you go on. And then there's the
Yeah.
whole group of very small
Yeah.
percentage, 10% of our group that want to move on to a more athletic endeavor, more competition. So they
Yeah.
play more often, they play more rigorously,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And we really have not had any kind of focus on coaching
Strength.
for those kinds of things in our sport, not in our province anyway. They do in other
Yeah.
provinces, but
Yeah.
we're just getting on to this. So it's, how
Yeah.
do you start this with it? And there are two distinct groups of people, because those from the recreational who see the competition type of things happening, they find their way to move into that group, but we still don't have, we're just beginning to learn, the coaches, ways to try to plan for training on during the season and some off season. We're just kind of getting to that. So
Yeah.
where do you start? I mean, Joan, you might have some other questions like that has something to do with that.
Yeah.
You know
And I
what?
think that if you're dealing with the recreational athletes that maybe don't have as much athleticism or history in sport, I think as a coach, you want to incorporate as much as you can cross training and activity and fitness based prescription. A lot of the like nice little watches or Fitbits and things like that, where we can focus on that 10,000 steps a day or 5,000 or 7,000, depending on physicality or issues, where we're looking at community involvement in other sports and activities in the off season. I know with lawn bowling, definitely anything all the other sports that deal with hand-eye coordination are always going to be beneficial for them, right? If we're thinking of or cross training in other activities off season like that. But I do think that coaches, that we can be giving resources nowadays to more and more athletes in this type of format, where if your athletes are a little bit dispersed, where you can be doing off-season sort of Zoom workouts. I know that during COVID, I was doing it with one of my rugby teams, where you can help bring up people's fitnesses with small little bits of group exercising. There are a fair amount in Parks and Rec. I know for sure in the HRM, where there is senior fitness classes in a lot of different localities, and there's even ones that are chair based. So if someone's coming in with not a lot of physicality, then maybe some more in community involvement and cross training is one way for you to help promote that. And you can even have competition challenges in your off season with athletes that are working towards steps or working towards hitting the number of alternative sports that they're working on, whether they're going for a snowshoe, they're going for a swim, or they're doing other things out in their community. So I know with some of the teams that I've worked at, we've worked on fitness challenges that are just based on, can you try to do other things in your off season, and sharing with each other, so that you're like, hey, I tried this today, or oh, I went and played badminton at the rec center, or oh, or I tried this. So that could be some of the ways to start with the non-physically fit group, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
I think that it's hard when you have a huge variance of athletes with skill sets and with injuries or orthopedic stuff or health conditions, right? So how big of a group are you working with normally?
Well, recreational at our club, just an example, we have over 100 members. I guess probably 80 of them easily would be have been coming recreationally or just begun recreationally to, bowl 1, 2, 3 times a week with a social group context, which
Yeah.
but it requires, endurance, high coordination, high hand coordination, stretching, a little bit of flexibility. It's a precision sport, right? So that we don't get into the high aerobic stuff, but
but you have to be nimble and focused, right?
Well, oh yeah, definitely mentally. It's a mental sport for sure. And then the actual procedure. I don't know, Joan, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, we have a smaller club for sure. But a lot of our new people are recently retired. Many have been sedentary. It's lack of physical activities throughout their lives, and all the things that Kathy mentioned, but also stability when you're trying to maintain your balance when you're delivering a lawn bowl. It can be a big challenge for a lot of them for sure.
And do you guys have a regular get ready to play warm up, or
no? That's something that we're trying to begin to bring into when people are learning to bowl, that it is critical to warm up. So to try and invite them to do that, which is it's quite a challenge to just have the mindset that we need to warm up and cool down, and you've got muscle groups there that you didn't know you had, and that kind of thing. That's a real trick, right? For the sport itself. We're just in its infancy really as sports go, because with the senior group, it just
and it may be what it looks like is that you start with a small number of 3 or 5 items that are integrated in your clubs as part of the warm up, and then each season you expand on that, so that if you have a lunge hip flexor release kind of opening stretch to start, if you have a single leg balance type of exercise, if you have some spinal twist rotation type of thing, a couple small ones that are sport specific, it's will always be easier for the athletes to buy in on that. I remember working with my dad, who's quite a lovely golfer into his 70s and still skates and was an excellent hockey player. And back in his day, you weren't even allowed to swallow the water on the bench because they thought it would give you cramps. You had to spit it out. So he's come from that level to where I can actually get him to do about 15 minutes of warm up before every golf game, before every time he goes for a skate. But the mentality was really like lace up and go, right? So you're breaking some of those patterns of like, well, we didn't do it for years. And you're like, well, science has improved, right?
Yeah, we
So
certainly incorporate all, those warm-ups and so on with Learn to Bowl and so on. But
yeah,
after that, they seem to forget about it unless there's
yes.
somebody there to remind them and to take them
Yeah.
through it. And you're not always there to do that.
Totally. And it's hard to get like that self-starting going. I know that like going back to rugby, there always was this really awkward rugby warm-up that was just like in the game for years, and trying to get them to shift to what the new science is of like single leg landing and explosiveness to protect that knee versus like just doing these high kicks and leg slaps that was sort of like ingrained in the sport for a long time. So what we know for sure in all sports, that working on some kind of component with some core activation is always going to be helpful. So if we think about some of the really basic core exercises that we know, like a back bridge, if we can find ways to get athletes to do some type of core stability work, you will decrease some of the injuries that we see in it. Interesting about flexibility is the research doesn't really show that you have to be tremendously flexible to prevent injuries. So one of the things that I'll say to older athletes that may be inflexible is that it's actually more important that there's an equality in flexibility between joints. So if you have an athlete who has a really stiff one hip versus the other, that's a bigger problem than both of their hips being stiff. So obviously that's a difference for sport for performance, because in lawn bowling, if you have really stiff hips, you're going to have difficulty getting into position. But for athletes that you may work with that they're really quite stiff, it's a little bit more important that they have good alignment, good balance, and good core control than be flexible, because there's tons of high performing world class athletes that are ridiculously inflexible, right? But I love the idea of starting small with warm-ups and building them. And it doesn't have to be long, but it is nice if they get into that mindset, like, let's get my body ready to go. Right.
We also have some equipment for those who are never going to be flexible.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
bowling arms and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting. They're reluctant to use it because it's almost like I'm not
crutch.
old enough for that, or
Stigma.
that the older
Yeah.
people, that's for the older people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you'll see people in yoga classes not wanting to get the yoga blocks for support because they're like, oh, I don't need that. And then they're struggling to do the thing. I think we see that in all sports. But the more as coaches that we lead by example and utilize those tools, the more commonplace some of them will become, right? Jennifer, any questions?
Oh, my athletes, I deal mostly with Special Olympics, and with the Canoe Kayak, I'm helping out with the grassroots para program.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the mobility issues, because even a lot of the Special Olympics don't get the exercise that they need.
Yeah.
They're not in the best of shapes. It's trying to get them out there, especially on the ice, trying to get them their balance and everything
is another level.
That.
Yeah. You're working with another unique aspects of athletes, and then you're working with a different group of athletes in ages too, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that like my best advice when you're working with a wide variety of athletes is obviously incorporate as much play as you can. So the play can be in the warm up, and the play can be in the challenges in your off season. The best success I ever have when there's this fun competition or silliness amongst the goals that you're working with as a group. And so if you can incorporate play that has a physicality to it that is completely unrelated to your sport sometimes, or have social get-togethers that are around play in a different way,
Right.
it's another way that you can add and build their fitness without sort of overtraining in that same sport. So you said, what were the sports that you were working with, Jennifer?
Curling and bocce with Special Olympics right now.
Yeah, and how often do you get together with those athletes?
In the fall and the winter, once curling ice is in, it's once a week with curling and once
Yeah.
a week with bocce, and it's normally the same athlete. So
And are they able to socially get together through the off season, or is that logistically hard?
well, bocce continues until July, and then August and September the program takes a break. So
Yeah.
it's those 2 months that we don't see them at all.
And do they have any program or exercise sort of
they do.
prescription for the space?
Mhm.
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have our athletes here in Dartmouth. I work with Special Olympics too, of course, according to my son. They have a bowling program that's weekly. So the curling runs similarly to the curling season. And, when there's snow, we have snowshoeing, which whenever that is. And then we have athletics that could be in January if we have indoor training. And then,
And are the same athletes participating in all the different sports?
Basically as many that want to participate in each sport in our region, the 15 different regions. Jen's in a different region than me, but it just they participate in multiple, and like I said, John Cal, our son's participating in speed skating now, just started last year. So they kind of the winter sports overlap, and then you run into the summery sports like softball and athletics and those kinds of things, and it's the same group. It's our regional athletes who choose to participate. And then bowling, almost every athlete in Dartmouth that is in a bowling program. So once a week. But the preparation, of course, the age range is anywhere from 14 to 64, or maybe, I don't know if we have any 70-year-olds yet, but
and huge variance in skills and issues.
Absolutely. I mean, I have maybe 3 or 4 athletes that can actually slide in curling. Most of them throw by stick, and we have a blind curler and all that. So, we have adaptations all over the place. So the physicality, I mean, to actually prepare, we only do like the physical preparation in things like athletics. So if they aren't in athletics and they come to curling after that season, well, they haven't had the same kind of physical preparation. So, I mean, even just the safety walking on the ice is a trick, because we're talking about balance and all that sort of thing. So it's
Kathy, how much I used to be really involved with therapeutic riding. How much do you work hand in hand with a physiotherapist?
We don't, that's a personal thing for each athlete.
Okay, so
you don't own programming. It's not, that's not something the Special Olympics takes care of.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And one suggestion, just as an idea coming from my world of dance, is that musicality and just free play, free movement could be an option for like a regular warm up for a lot of different sports, where music comes on and it's like, let's get the body going, and free dance, because within the Special Olympics group, that could be something that is just a really nice freedom, fun get to go. And no matter what everybody's sort of working with, the way that they can dance in their own way. And that could be a way to cardiovascular, get the heart rate up, but it not have to be so structured and specific for everybody to be able to do their own thing. So maybe the way that Ellen used to come into her TV show with all the music and everybody just sort of like free danced, maybe free dance could be a way of getting their bodies warmed up and ready to go. And I think it's about the coaches coming up with maybe as many innovative ways about being active, as opposed to like specific, if you're doing this bicep curl, the way this is going to make you feel great, right? As opposed to cross training and trying different sports in the off seasons, right? It sounds like there's an amazing number of sports for the Special Olympic group.
Oh yeah. And I was thinking of lawn bowls. Joan, we got to get the ghetto blasters out in the green, get them going.
Right? I think it's a great idea. Like nobody minds it.
I never thought of that. Started.
Let's
get the
dance floor going.
Let's get the dance going before we start. Maybe they'll take on to that.
good
I
way
can
to
see
get,
it.
you got to show up the first day. What I did one day during Zoom shutdowns was I came on with like my 80s headband and my leg warmers, and I did like this whole Jane Fonda, and the team was looking at me like I was crazy, and I'm like, let's go. But it gets the athletes laughing for sure. So maybe the first day they intro the dance, show up in the most ridiculous costume you can. And if you got your leg warmers, get them out.
That's a good
So,
idea. I
right?
know
I
a
think it's
couple of
about
people
getting our
who
bodies
would lead
moving.
that. They would
What?
lead it, I know.
And
That's good
if you
thinking,
pull out some good tunes, right? Like
right?
maybe a
You
like, well,
know, 16, 70-year-olds have a common decade there of good tunes,
totally,
right?
right? Or maybe your theme song is just like Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical, right? Like
Yeah,
in honor of her this year. Maybe
yeah,
that's yeah,
yeah.
I can sing it if you want, but
Yeah.
but I feel like the best advice I can give is play. Any way that you can find ways to play, you'll get the athletes to buy in the most. You'll get the most fun, and it's about just like how can we get our bodies moving. And the more we exercise, the fitter we'll be. And the data shows that it doesn't need to be you're at the gym lifting this weight this often. It's about like how much are you actively moving in your 12 months of the year, right? That's awesome, right?
And just to jump in here, this might be an opportunity for us to like make a working document where we can add some ideas of like how to get our athletes to play or warm up. Because I know like I coach ring ed, so it's mainly like U20, but we do a dance circle as our warm up sometimes, because even at 17, 18, like they do not want to do a warm up or they do not want to do a cool down. So instead they do a dance. There's actually one song that like all Nova Scotia ring ed athletes know the dance to it, because it's just like a thing that has been incorporated in our PSO.
That's amazing.
So yeah,
I didn't even know
maybe
that. That's
and then
good.
there's some like games like we play tic-tac-toe, you may know of that, where you can run, or you could do something different too if running's not an option. But you play tic-tac-toe, and then the loser has to either run or like maybe do arm swings or whatever you want to do. So yeah, maybe we can make like a working document and share some ideas of how we get our athletes to play before they play.
I love that.
For real. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Just putting like my therapy hat on for a sec. One of the things I will really promote for athletes to think on, and that was looping back to sort of the physiotherapy question, is that I think that athletes should be thinking about preseason screen assessment, kind of like how's my body doing with their favorite massage therapist, physiotherapist, chiropractor, osteopath, athletic therapist. It's something we do in university sports. You know, I worked at the University of Victoria. Every single incoming athlete had to have like a good physical assessment of the body. We checked out how their joints were moving. We're checked out how their body's moving. We checked out any injuries. So if we think along the lines of doing preventative medicine with our therapists in our community, it's a great idea to promote the idea to go and see their favorite therapist before their season starts, to see if everything's gliding and sliding the way they're supposed to. Are they nice and equal in strength? Every therapist I know in the province is happy to see that person who's thinking, okay, my sport's starting back up. How's my body moving? And if we can be treating people's bodies and helping their bodies before the season starts, then we're not treating the injuries, we're preventing some of those injuries. And it doesn't need to be any specific type of therapist. Every therapist in the province has a toolbox that's going to be able to see how things are moving. And it's important that we think along the lines of maintaining that preventative love through in our bodies throughout the year. You know, I talk with my athletes about how often do you kind of want to see your manual therapist during the year. Depends on your sport, depends on your volume, depends on your previous injuries, depends on your diseases or health history issues. But, you know, if I can have an athlete that only needs to see me 3 or 4 times a year to stay ahead of stuff, fantastic. You know, I have Ironman athletes that are training 24 hours a week that I can get them to where they only need to see me every 3 or 4 months, because the homework tools that they're doing on their body in between is helping them stay away from living in a therapist's office. And the other sort of tool that I say all the time to all of my athletes that I want all my coaches in the province doing is working on recovery work to volume ratio. So if you are training in your high performance athletes at 10, 15, 20 hours a week, the amount of recovery work you should be doing is in a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you train for 10 hours a week, there should be 5 hours of work a week that is working on your recovery stuff. And recovery includes seeing one of your therapists, doing your stretching, doing yoga, working on correcting imbalances in your body, or so maybe some of that pre-activation strength training rehab. It can be taking Epsom salt baths. It could be in a hot tub or hot showers. It could be using heat or ice. It can be do some of the manual stripping massage stuff. The massage guns are really trendy now. Lots of people have like blades or stretching work, or they're working on foam rollers. But thinking about stuff for your body to help all that tissue to recover. And what we do see in older athletes is that if you are the further out of balance that you are on that workout hours to recovery hours, the greater we see you in clinic. So when people are training 20 hours a week and not really doing any recovery work, they're going to break down the tissues at some point, and something's going to put them into a clinic or to their doctor's office. So the healthier the athlete is closer to that 2-to-1 ratio, the better that long-term they can stay out of injuries or problems.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't find that balance at all. And they're training volumes high, and they're jamming that around family and life and work. And then they injure something badly, and then they're out for months or weeks or whatever that is. And a lot of injuries we see in the clinic could be prevented if you were doing preseason tests or assessments or a little bit of maintenance work during the year, right? Okay. Any other questions?
Do you have anything to add on safety and how that changes?
I think that safety is a big word, and a bigger word amongst 75 possible sports for our masters athletes. However, I think that having regular checkups with your physician and having regular yearly check-ins with your therapist is going to help stay ahead of a lot of some of the issues and illnesses and diseases that we see in master athletes are going to be a little different than we see in our youth athletes. I mean, we're going to see the diabetes and the epilepsy and the asthma from youth to seniors. But when we start dealing with osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, COPD, cancers, things like that, we're going to see those in our later athletes more. And so some of the safety things that we need to do is making sure people, or it's not our job, but promoting to making sure that we're utilizing our healthcare to stay ahead of stuff. So that's one aspect of safety. We do see a higher incidence of falling, obviously, as we get older. But we typically see that that's an issue from lack of activity and lack of fitness that goes from not exercising, right? So, one of the physiotherapists in our clinics was just at Northbrook doing a fall prevention class amongst the seniors there. So there are resources both online for that aspect of safety of athletes getting injured from falls in sports. But that, once again, I think the focus should be on of helping them promote and ensure that they're exercising more often so that they're strong and have a bit more balance. But once again, maybe we put balance exercises into those warm-ups, or we promote a bit of a balance exercise program. And then, safety can go into a different realm when we're talking about safety of personal space or our bodies. In coaching or in our atmospheres and stuff, but I won't go down that tangent, I don't think. But on a physical sense, is there anything specific safety wise that you had wanted?
I'm sort of thinking a little bit with senior athletes in equestrian, where it's can be very rapid thought process, the cognition, the changes in cognition and ability. That's one thing that I am noticing a little bit is I've got riders in their 70s that are still jumping courses of fences and galloping and working at high speed. So it's what I find with them is they need to be very organized in their thought before attempting something challenging.
Yeah. And are you worrying about some of your athletes having early Alzheimer's or dementia?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, there seems to be, and it could be vision, it could be hearing loss as well. and dealing with that, like making sure that the instruction actually, like, so I wear a headset with a speaker so they can hear me, and to make sure that the information, the coaching information has gotten through, so they're prepared to execute the task that's being coached.
Yeah. And I think that like in the safety cognition wise, it's a little trickier. You know, if people are regularly seeing their family doctors, then the doctor might be catching that cognitive, but not typical in our healthcare system are people in that 6 minutes with their doctor giving all the information to see if we can catch that soon enough. But in your sport, does it make sense to have some type of screening for yearly eye care or vision or hearing or cognition kind of stuff when you get to a certain age?
Yeah, I guess the challenge is to have, for me personally, because I coach one-on-one with these athletes, is to have the conversation and to sort of be aware of any changes that are happening in their life.
Yeah.
You know, some of them I've been coaching for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
So I've sort of seen the evolution.
Well.
I know the athletes, they think that their bodies can continue to do and react the way that they did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But our sport is very physically challenging.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
And huge based on reaction time.
Yes, absolutely. Reaction and feel and timing and sort of understanding the technical aspect of it immediately and in the moment is so important.
Yeah. And then I think that the hard spot, I'm sure for you as a coach, is having those conversations with athletes to say that they're starting to lose that reaction time touch, right?
Yeah, I usually just tell them their horse is getting older.
Oh,
They have to be kind to their horse.
I like that. That's a good adaptation. Yeah. I think that my best advice with your group is it would be to make sure that they are getting, you know, vision and hearing testing, because obviously that's going to be one aspect for the reaction time. And that's an easy sort of thing that you could have as part of like a certain phase of, okay, well, when we reach this phase, this is the time to get our ears, you know, our hearing tested. Or,
Right.
Right. Maybe.
Right. Ironically, a number of them are actually healthcare professionals. So they're harder to kind of boss around sometimes.
We're the worst at that. Yes. So if you have issues, just send me a note and I'll send them a note. No, I'm just kidding.
Sounds good. I look forward to that.
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Was there any other questions, guys? I want to make sure I sort of answered as much as I could. And hi, John. John popped in a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, hi. Sorry I was late. I blew it on the time. I was making my son lunch.
That's all right. We recorded it for you for your later watching.
Okay, great.
So before we go then, John, did you have any quick questions from your 1 minute that you joined in?
No. I think I actually might have misunderstood the purpose of the meeting when I registered. I'm a student athlete coach. Typically younger individuals, and so I was just using it as an opportunity to kind of get in and see what was available through this new coaching platform that I joined.
Right on. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And yeah, your athletes are a little bit younger than the masters groups.
Yes,
but they still need warm-ups. They still need to cross
They definitely
still need recovery work.
Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. And if we don't have any more questions, I will just talk about what our upcoming sessions are. But before we get into that, thank you again, Natalie. That was awesome.
No
I know I even took notes because a lot of that does apply, like you mentioned, to
absolutely
athletes under 20, but then also just to have some resources for coaches of masters athletes as well. So I'm going to look into some of like that fall prevention stuff, and I'll make a document so that we can start sharing some fun ways that we can warm up or cool down or whatever together. All right, so coming up next, so as hopefully most of you know, September has National Coaches Week throughout it. So at the end of National Coaches Week, we're going to start a series with Bettina and Brad. So Bettina and Bradley are researchers specifically with coaching masters athletes. So Bettina is actually based at CBU, so Cape Breton University, and Bradley is at the University of Ottawa. So they're going to do a 2-part series, kind of more like a workshop. The first one will be around the quality of master sport experience, so what that means, how coaches can contribute to that. So that will be at noon on September 27th. And then they'll be back 2 months later on November 22nd, where we'll talk more about the psychology of coaching masters athletes and how coaches can use them. So again, September 27th, November 22nd, it's in the locker if you want to register there, or I also will be sending out email reminders as well. So again, this was recorded. Feel free to share it with your coaches or even your athletes as well. And then hopefully we'll see you guys again in September.
Okay, thanks so
Great.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You guys.
Thanks, Natalie.
Have a great day.
It was
Thanks.
great seeing
Thanks.
you all.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.